Every day, complex code silently integrates into our physical lives. We navigate our cities, work, and social networks through a frictionless, invisible architecture of algorithms. In the summer of 2018, Pew Research and Elon University's Imagining the Internet Center conducted a massive canvassing to forecast the impact of this architecture. They surveyed 979 technology pioneers, corporate practitioners, scholars, and policy leaders about the year 2030. The researchers presented these experts with a binary question. As we become entirely dependent on networked artificial intelligence, will these systems enhance human capacities and leave most people better off than they are today? Or will they lessen human autonomy to the point that most people will not be better off? This pie chart illustrates the top-line results. 63% of respondents predicted people will be mostly better off, while 37% predicted they will not. On paper, there is a clear quantitative consensus that augmenting human lives with technology will simply continue. But that 63% majority is a statistical illusion. When you read past the top-line data and analyze the thousands of written essays submitted by the respondents, the optimistic numbers completely mask a deeply pessimistic consensus. Parsing the qualitative responses reveals a profound systemic dread. This anxiety is not limited to the 37% who voted negatively. It is shared equally among the statistical optimists who voted yes. Across hundreds of responses, the same specific fears repeat. Experts warn of an incoming infrastructure built for total social control and caution that humanity is trending toward existential irrelevance in the face of machine cognition. To underline the severity of this trajectory, the survey respondents explicitly cited severe warnings issued by some of the most prominent scientific and technological figures of our time. They cited leaders like Elon Musk, who has repeatedly argued that the unchecked deployment of artificial intelligence poses a literal existential threat to humanity. They also invoked the late Stephen Hawking, a primary voice cautioning that developing full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. But parsing the actual data reveals that the central threat identified by these 979 experts is not a science fiction singularity where machines wake up and destroy us. The actual threat is the frictionless erosion of human agency and the mathematical amplification of structural inequality. The survey text isolates 4 primary threat factors. The first is cognitive deskilling. In exchange for low-friction convenience, we voluntarily cede our daily decision-making to algorithmic black boxes. We let code choose our routes, curate our news, and filter our communications. These algorithms are explicitly designed to remove ambiguity and friction from our lives. But biologically and psychologically, ambiguity and friction are the exact elements required for human learning and adaptation. Looking at this decision tree diagram, we see the mechanics of outsourced cognition. Active human decision nodes are replaced by opaque algorithm nodes. The consequence is severe. As we offload cognitive practices, we experience an erosion of independent judgment, situational awareness, and context. This is an architectural problem. These systems dictate behavior to maximize efficiency, converting autonomy into passive automation. The second vector is surveillance architectures. Networked AI capabilities do not exist in a vacuum. They are entirely dependent upon the massive, continuous extraction of user data. The expert consensus notes that these data systems are not currently engineered for the common good. Instead, they are optimized for amoral corporate market extraction and authoritarian state control. Multiple experts invoked George Orwell, noting that the realization of state-level social credit systems and omnipresent mass surveillance is no longer fiction, but active infrastructure. This data extraction relies on the GIGO principle, garbage in, garbage out. Because the algorithms are trained on historical human data, they mathematically launder and automate our existing societal biases rather than curing them. This diagram visualizes that exact feedback loop. Raw data is extracted from the user, flows into central monopolies for processing, and returns to the user as micro-targeted persuasion to manipulate their behavior and harvest their attention.
Within this specific architecture, the user is no longer the customer. The human being is simply the raw material for algorithmic optimization. That optimization drives the third vector, neo-feudalism, mapping the extreme economic and labor impacts of networked AI. We cannot compare this shift to the Industrial Revolution. Previous technological leaps destroyed old jobs, but created new physical tasks. AI operates differently. It eliminates cognitive tasks at a speed that vastly outpaces the population's ability to retrain. Driven by efficiency and profit, modern corporations are aggressively pushing to eliminate full-time human employees who require healthcare, pensions, and salaries, and replace them with infinitely scalable algorithmic software. This graph tracks economic density. As cognitive automation takes over, the middle-class knowledge work that anchored the economy disappears. Economic output entirely decouples from human labor. The nodes redistribute, creating a massive bottom layer of precarious gig workers and a microscopic top layer of owners. Without structural reform, AI productivity gains will completely bypass the workforce. The wealth generated will centralize solely among the handful of entities that own the algorithms. The final vector outlined in the canvassing is systemic fragility, a direct threat to the security of macro-level human infrastructure. Historically, human societies relied on distributed, robust local networks. Highly interconnected AI systems replace that resilience with hyper-complex, centralized single points of failure. The survey explicitly warns that these single points of failure invite unprecedented mayhem. Experts point to the rapid acceleration of autonomous military applications and the ability of cybercriminals to paralyze national grids. But the most immediate fragility comes from weaponized information. The deployment of synthetic media, deepfakes, and hyper-targeted propaganda allows bad actors to aggressively destabilize human populations without firing a shot. Experts point to the 2016 Brexit referendum as a primary example of this vulnerability, highlighting how complex data analytics micro-targeted citizens to subvert a population. They also cite the 2016 U.S. election as proof of concept, demonstrating how micro-targeted data acquisitions can successfully bypass democratic norms to manipulate electoral outcomes. When an entire society increases its dependence on an opaque algorithmic infrastructure, it intrinsically lowers its baseline resilience against targeted disruption. Deskilling, surveillance, neo-feudalism, and fragility. These four vectors do not operate in isolation. They function as a tightly interlocked feedback loop. Surveillance feeds the algorithms that drive deskilling. Deskilling accelerates job displacement. Economic displacement breeds the social fragility that bad actors exploit. Each pressure accelerates the others, which brings us back to the core paradox. If the world's leading technologists mapped out this dystopian loop, why did 63% of them still vote that humanity will be better off by 2030? They voted optimistically because they view these negative outcomes as avoidable design choices and policy failures. They do not view them as inevitable laws of technological physics. The 63% consensus is not a prediction of guaranteed success. It is a desperate vote of confidence in humanity's capacity for structural intervention. The canvassing lays out specific remedies to achieve that intervention. The experts argue for moonshot digital cooperation across borders and the rigorous engineering of values-based systems. To execute this, we must shift away from the current architecture. We have to break up algorithmic monopolies by migrating to decentralized network topologies, returning data control to the individual user. Economic and political systems must be actively reorganized. We must prioritize radical human improvement, social justice, and societal resilience over pure profit-driven efficiency metrics. This architectural schematic models the exact choice we face: abandon the monolithic, centralized networks that extract our data and build highly distributed networks designed for human empowerment. Artificial intelligence is an agnostic socio-technical amplifier. By 2030, the technology will perfectly scale the exact values of whatever political and economic system deploys it.